Hi, everyone. Welcome to Chapter 1, the main themes of microbiology, Part 2, Impact of Microbes on Earth. Small organisms with a giant effect. So let's get started. This is the Part 2 of your chapter. So in this section, we should be able to describe the role and impact of microbes on the Earth and explain the theory of evolution and why it is called a theory. So the impact of microbes on the Earth. Microorganisms have shaped the development of Earth's habitats for billions of years. They were the earliest forms of life on Earth. And so we can look at this graphic with this timeline, the probable origin of the Earth somewhere over 4 billion years ago, and some ancestral cell type uh, um, the building blocks of life, the amino acids and nucleic acids can be generated in various kinds of environments, and they've even found some of these things out on asteroids and things like that. Not cells, but the building blocks of life. Um, but anyway, some ancestral cell type gave rise to the bacteria and the archaea, and that ultimately gave rise to the eukaryotes through the endosymbiotic theory, which we will talk about later in the semester when we talk about the parts of the cell. I think that's module 2. And then ultimately to insects, reptiles, mammals, and then finally up here we have humans and other organisms as well developing in the present time. But you can kind of see the timeline for where these things developed and how that has worked in the evolutionary biology, evolutionary sense. This is over, time of billions of years. Okay, so here, thinking about eukarya versus bacteria and archaea, cells with a nucleus, and I just talked about this in the earlier section, are classified as eukaryotes. Eukarya means true nucleus, so true nucleus. Kary means nucleus. UU means true. Cells without a nucleus are classified as akaryotes. And I already mentioned that the letter A in front means without. And they're also referred to as prokaryotes. I think generally prokaryotes is still the more common usage. And so I will most often use the word prokaryotes. You've probably heard that in your other biology courses. However, this term akaryote is also starting to become more commonly used. So we need to know both of these terms in order to really be clear on what we're talking about. So I just want you to be aware of those things. The bacteria and the archaea have no true nucleus, so they would fall into the category of being a prokaryote or an akaryote. Whereas fungi, protozoa, and helminths all have a nucleus, as do humans, and we would fall into the eukaryotic category. Hopefully, this sounds familiar from your earlier biology class. If not, please review. If you need any help or have any questions, I'm happy to send you information. So bacteria are ubiquitous. What does that word ubiquitous mean? Ubiquitous means it's found everywhere. It's ubiquitous. I'm trying to think of things that, sometimes you'll see like some story in the news that everybody will be talking about it, and it's like ubiquitous. Everybody knows about it. And that's how bacteria are, and microorganisms in general. They are found everywhere, deep down in the Earth's crust, and the polar ice caps, and the oceans, inside our bodies, and plants and animals, everywhere. It's hard to imagine a place where you can't find bacteria or microorganisms. So evolution is the accumulation of changes over time, and usually takes a long period of time. The theory of evolution is the foundation of biology, and so it's also the foundation of microbiology and how we understand how biology works and how science works, is how living things work, is through this platform of evolution and through the theory of evolution. It's hard to imagine how we would study biology without having this as a foundation of our understanding. That being said, we don't think about it every day when we're looking at cells or when we're looking at a blood smear or something like that. We're not saying, oh, look how this evolved. We're just looking as it is now because evolution, again, takes generations and millennia to occur. Now, in bacteria, it can happen fairly quickly because their lifespan is, or their life cycle is only about 30 minutes for them to reproduce. So you can see it happening there. So it is observable. It is testable by science in that way. It's called a theory because it's been well studied and well established and agreed upon by virtually all of the scientific world. I do want to make a little caveat there because I know we very often have students who are deeply religious and they feel that, oh, that goes against my religious beliefs. And I think we just need to make a distinction there between science. Science are things that you can prove that are factual, and religion and religious beliefs are things that you believe. They don't have to be in battle with each other because they're not giving you the same information. Science is telling you kind of how things happened, how things work, whereas religion is trying to tell you why, what is the purpose, what is the meaning of this. We can't really get to that in science. So I don't think it should need to be a conflict in any way. They're just two separate things. They're separate entities. Okay. So microbes and microorganisms that started, billions of years ago, they are the things that ultimately created and generated our atmosphere. Bacteria invented photosynthesis. And of course, photosynthesis started as a process in a situation where there was no oxygen in the atmosphere, because early in Earth's time, the atmosphere was very different than it is today. Thanks to trees and photosynthetic microorganisms, we have oxygen, which enables us to live, right? So it's a really good thing that happened. But that's the production of oxygen by microorganisms is ultimately what allowed for so many species to diversify and to exist and get generated. So photosynthetic microorganisms, again, they contribute to the majority of oxygen in the atmosphere, whether through algae or photosynthetic bacteria. It used to be called the blue-green algae and things like that. Those types of bacteria. And also, of course, trees and plants do that too. But bacteria and algae, which are part of microbiology, account for 70% of the Earth's photosynthesis, mostly from the oceans and various water sources. So it's very important for our environment. Microorganisms are super important for decomposition. So when things die, and so their bodies don't just lay around forever. Microorganisms will break down those organisms, those dead organisms, and return those molecules, return those nutrients, return all of those things back to a useful way and get used then by microorganisms, which can then be used as food for other bigger things, and then up and down the food chain. So decomposition or breaking down dead things is accomplished primarily by bacteria as well as fungi. Talk about that as we go through. Microorganisms determine, what the soil is going to be like, the quality of the soil. They produce gases like methane gases and other kinds of gases. They can produce various acids and things like that. They live in very complex relationships with plants and animals, and they contribute to the well-being of plants and animals. And so there's a lot of mutual benefit between the microorganisms and the animal and the plants and animals on the earth. So that takes us to the end of this section. So by now you should be able to distinguish the difference between an eukaryote and a eukaryote. And you should keep in your brain eukaryote and prokaryote, put those together here, and eukaryote. And the basic tenets of evolution, and then a quick true false, microscopic organisms produce more oxygen than plants. And now you should know true is the answer to that one. All right, so I will see you soon for the next one.